There's 80% unemployment, 80% alcoholism.
Are you happy to talk with this camera?
Oh yeah.
Cool. That's good. That's good. I just want to make sure.
So like, we'll grow out of it.
It's possible, yeah.
If you go into that area that I was born in and reared in, it's a prosperous area.
Yeah, no, I agree.
No longer go to prison. There are jobs.
Definitely agree that over time, demographics change. But I think that the Islamic way of life has a way of particularly countering that. I think that they can form tight communities, they can use their own language, they can meet at their own masjids, their own mosques, they can have their own inner communities that extend not just to social life but also into economics. They can have their own businesses. We actually have a Christian equivalent of this called the Benedict option, which we're not currently enacting at the moment. What we have at the moment is, let's take the UK. There are many Christians in the UK, but we're very decentralised. There are some Christians in London, all over the place. And we meet in churches and we have fellowship that way, but we don't live in Christian communities. We effectively have a secular community that meets at church on Sundays and kind of, you know what I mean?
If I go back to the Acts of the Apostles, I see a Christian community as communist. Communist rather than communist.
Sure.
And when you talk about Islamic communities having their own language and their own meeting places, you have here in London, you have London slang.
Yeah, Cockney,
which
right?
I wouldn't understand. Cockney slang.
When was the last time you heard someone speak Cockney? I'm not going to lie, it's been. I do hear it. Actually, I think mostly Kay, I think, speaks kind of Cockney-like, but you know.
I haven't heard it in a long time.
Yeah, it's because the community is just
but you could go
diluted.
You could go to Donegal in Ireland, and they speak English, but you wouldn't understand a word they say.
Yeah.
They have their own communities. There are areas in Ireland that have the Gaelic language. And they gather together with Gaelic languages. So what's so different with the Islamic community? Can they not grow the same as we?
Because I think the Islamic community has a defense against the secular world. And I think that largely is usually a unique language, a common place of worship that distinguishes itself against the West. So you need to think, in churches, we don't go around saying the West is evil. Well, to use Islamic language, the West is, what's the word they use? Begins with a D, I forgot the word now. Immoral, yeah? They say it's vastly immoral. They say, look around, look at these women who are having sex. Look at these women who are drinking. Look at the men who are getting drunk. And you can see this. So you go to Stratford, you go there in the city centre and you look at there on a Saturday night, you will see drunk people all around the place, And you will also see a strong Muslim community. And you see them dressed in niqab, you see them dressed in hijab, or whatever it might be. And they are looking around and they are seeing all these secular people doing all these things, and it just verifies in their head, decadence, that's the word, that these people are decadent. And even in the East, they will teach the same thing, that the West is decadent, because they have all these different things. But in the church, we don't have that concept. You will very rarely hear a sermon by a vicar or a preacher, or whatever it might be, a pastor saying, the West is decadent, don't engage in it. Rather we say, the West has issues, here's how we address the issues, because we partake in the West. They don't partake in the West in their view. There are many Muslims, if you ask them where their loyalty is, they'll definitely say Islam first, and their nationality second. And they'll often say that their nationality might not even be the UK. They might say it's actually Pakistan, Afghanistan, Bangladesh, they say Indonesia, they say any of these places.
If you take history, European history, let's take Irish history, just Irish history.
Sure, yeah.
Let's have a look at Irish history. Up until 1890, 80% were Catholic.
Okay,
Why?
Because of the strong communities they had as part of the church, I would imagine.
No.
You're going to say something else?
No. It was because the oppressors were Protestant.
Oh, sorry.
And it was the only way that they could distinguish who they were, because they took the property, they took the language, they took the cultures.
So they took their identity from
the only way we could actually say we are Irish and oppose the oppressor was to be Catholic. And maybe your Muslims are in the same similar situation. I'm only being the devil's advocate here.
Sure.
Because if I look at history, not just Ireland, but other parts of Europe where you had a similar demographic, a similar problem. Now, what brought Irish Catholicism to where it is today, which is almost non-existent? There may be 20% of the population following it. Why? What brought it there?
So I do think that there is possibly. I think there were other problems as well.
Teaching.
I think there is a strong emphasis on worship, on liturgy, on the spiritual life, the Catholics, but there isn't much of a, I would argue, an intellectual commitment. So I think that in many ways, there are Catholics who are not intellectually aware of why they hold their faith, which is perhaps not as much of a problem in Protestant circles. That's my opinion. That's my opinion.
I would agree with you. I would agree with you that there's only a limited number of Catholics who would be au fait with all the aspects of their religion and who actually practice it to the extreme, and I'm using that word respectfully, and who read the Bible. But how many Muslims read the Quran?
Oh, absolutely.
How many Muslims can speak Arabic?
But I want to come back at you though with, for them it's a culture, not just a religion. Their religion and culture are intertwined.
I understand.
So they will focus on the cultural and not the religious. So for
but it was the same in Ireland in 1890.
Oh, I'm sure.
It's the same in Ireland in 1890.
So, are you aware in France at the moment, there are problems in France where every week a church is burned down in France, statistically
I
average.
realised that there were problems because approximately 25% of the population are Muslim, that they're mainly ex-Algerian, Moroccan, and that they have not integrated.
Yes.
But we have to look at the Algerian War as the cause of that.
Fine, it isn't just in France though, we have issues here as well. I don't think it's anywhere near as bad as France, but it still happens in this place. I would say also that the Protestants and the Catholics, although there was violence and there was an active form of oppression, essentially you go back to Oliver Cromwell when he came in, did horrendous things, attacking and killing people in forts and things. There's a history in Ireland of actual oppression from the English, yeah? With the Muslims coming to this country, they don't have that kind of understanding of oppression.
They had in India,
you could say in some areas potentially.
In Iraq, and in Israel, and in Lebanon.
Okay,
Sudan.
Okay, so what I mean is, if you look at places like Saudi Arabia, there's no reason to think if you grew up in Mecca or Jeddah or wherever you are, there's no reason to think you've been directly oppressed by anyone in the West.
The English are generally not the oppressed.
The English,
They're not the oppressed. They're not the oppressed.
Generally. Well, it depends. You talk about English, yeah.
They tend to be viewed as an oppressing.
Yes, historically, yes.
If you have a look at the history of the Hijaz, which is the area in
around Mecca,
in Western Mecca and etc.,
Medina.
You will find that Lawrence of Arabia was involved there, that there were numerous promises made to the sheriff there as regards a united Arab state, and they were let down by both the English and the French. So what do you call oppression? Is oppression just keeping people down?
So in this instance, I'm talking about actual war. So I'm talking about the English going into Irish lands and actually killing people there.
The English went into Egypt, they went into Sudan, they went into Iraq, they went into Israel.
You're aware with Ireland, it was, well, by modern standards, it would be a war crime, like what Oliver Cromwell did.
This nation has a particular predilection for property ownership.
How do you mean by that?
The ownership of property is generally placed above the sanctity of humanity here.
We take the rights of property very seriously, and that actually largely comes from the Scottish tradition of Adam Smith. In The Wealth of Nations, he talked about the importance of free trade, and part of that is the idea that you own property. And you got John Locke as well, he would talk about the philosophy of that. So I agree, and you can say it's perverted.
However, property ownership was certainly institutionalised pre-Smith.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. But the idea that someone would own property, I absolutely agree with that. But the significance of the rights of the king being able to go into your property.
A master and a vassal.
So, for example, a king could have gone into your house back then. He would have had the right to have done that.
So, like the police can come into your house now?
Not without a warrant, no. Or suspicion of, you know what I mean?
They can, because they can arrest you at your property, which constitutes a search.
If they have suspicion you've done a crime or you're an active... Reasonable cause, yeah. They can't just walk into your house and say...
Reasonable cause and reasonable suspicion.
Stop and search. What one person's reasonableness is another person's victimness.
Absolutely fine. I agree that there are edge cases, and I think that has been abused in many cases. I'm absolutely fine. But just going back to our point, I see that there are reasons to be happy and to say, hey, I think maybe Islam is on the decline. I think there are good reasons for believing that. But I think that there is still a very important battle here.
Excuse me, so Islam is on decline?
Yes. Let me describe. It will in future. It will in future. It's largely to do with wealth of certain nations. As you become more wealthy, like the Middle East becomes more wealthy, demographically, you have less kids. So at the moment, like, you can look like even 20 years ago, like the amount of
45
children
to 1,000
that Muslim
was
families were having has dropped radically, like
And
it
it's
has, like it has here.
12,000 for West. For
Yeah.
the West, it's only
So,
12,000. 12 per thousand.
I would suggest you look at a YouTube channel called Sneakers Corner. He's done a video about this that talks about Sneakers Corner, yeah.
So,
Well,
there
anyway,
are 2 billion Muslims, give or take.
Yeah. I'm saying in the future, in decades from now, Islam will decline.
And doesn't it also state in the
That's
Hadith as well? Didn't Muhammad say
It would decline. It did. It's a prophecy complete, right? Yeah.
Christianity,
I like to believe it will be on the incline, but that's my
opinion.
opinion.
But is it your opinion also that Islam will decline?
It's it's based on evidence that Muslim birth rates in traditionally poorer countries, but now they're getting wealthier,
It's pure research.
will go down. Yeah,
And they indicate
it's backed up by evidence, is what I'm saying, based on birth rates that you can observe through government statistics. That there's a trend that is going down, and I'm saying that trend is probably going to continue.
But your belief in Christian ascendancy is
My opinion.
your opinion. So that's not based on evidence.
No, that's based on the fact that I think that as Christians we can do a better job preaching to the lost. Yeah, that's my opinion.
In preaching to
the lost. So whether that's ex-Muslims,
he's talking about me here.
oh yeah, I guess so. Yeah.
Is it?
Yeah.
The lost, yeah.
You are the Lord.
Yeah, well, I've lost my Christian faith.
And I believe, hopefully one day, that he will reaffirm his faith in Christ. That's my hope. That's my hope.
Have you no religion now?
I believe in God. I believe in God.
But this is more of an intellectual question here. I do think you may have alluded to it, but in this country, Islam, I think, is growing, in effect, in this country.
Yeah.
But I think that will reach a peak and then eventually, hopefully, decline.
Worldwide, it's growing, right?
Yes.
And world population is growing.
No, it's not. It's not growing in sub-Saharan Africa. It's not growing in Indonesia.
It's definitely not growing in Iran.
It's
It's not growing in Iran. No,
It's not growing in
No, in Iran,
decreasing
there's mass apostasy in Iran.
Yeah.
Like they're doing polls and they keep
But
showing
that's
that.
because of the government rather than the religion.
Well, it's probably to do with their history.
But one affects
You
the
remember?
other.
Yeah, you remember that? Was it in the 1970s? Iran had a revolution.
Yeah, that's right, yeah. The Ayatollah
So
Khomeini
yeah,
took
so
over.
Iran. There are pictures of girls in Iran in the 70s wearing miniskirts. They don't wear miniskirts in Iran at the moment. Well, I don't know. But my point is that there was a massive urge of re-Islamicize.
So you could drink in the 70s
That's
in
right.
Iran. You
That's
could
right.
go
Yeah,
out and
that's
have a
right.
party. And
Yeah.
That's right.
You couldn't after that though.
The Ayatollah.
Yeah, it's all. Yeah.
And so from the institutionalisation of the Islamic Republic
Yeah.
in 1979,
Yeah.
you now have
Massive apostasy. Massive
Yeah, there are stories of Muslims who go to the masjid and they perform a cat, they pray, but they're atheists. But they do it because culturally they're expected to do it. And we know this because we give independent polls, and it's something like only 20%. Yeah, Pew Research. Yeah, I love Pew Research.
What's the punishment for apostasy? Because apostasy is a crime.
Yeah, death.
It's a-
According to all schools of Islam, it's death. It's just a question of how do you do it. Do you wait so long before you kill them, or do you do it immediately? Do you give them a second chance? Yeah, you know.
So the apostate, as it were, or the act of apostasy,
Yeah.
is something that is self-declared or imposed. Like, can you impose
I think you can.
apostasy? Can you declare someone an apostate
So
if they're found guilty?
let's be careful because there's
Yes.
an Islamic perspective and there's a cultural one.
Yeah.
So, for example, in Afghanistan, there are stories of women who are burned alive because an imam just said that they lied about the Quran. Like that isn't necessarily Islamically prescribed. You can maybe make a case that that's not appropriate in Islam, but culturally they do it because that's how they are. They're mostly villages with tribes. Like they have these net communities where they feel they need to moderate them, and that's how they moderate them. You know.
Moderation is in control.
Yeah, as in someone has blasphemed, we need to kill them. Now that might not necessarily be the way they do it, as in they tell them you have blasphemed and then kill them. Might not be Islamic, I don't know actually. But saying you are no longer a Muslim publicly, that definitely is Islamically. So you see what I mean? There's a difference there between what Islam teaches and what the culture itself has as a practice.
The culture being the application of
Yeah.
Sharia law.
Yeah. Because they all.
But you have to have Sharia law to have that culture. Is it grounded?
The culture uses Sharia. The culture is inherently intertwined with Sharia. If you talk to anyone in Afghanistan about whether they follow the Sharia, they'd like to believe they would.
It's a necessary precondition
of where they are culturally. Yes. If you took away Sharia from Afghanistan, they couldn't explain a lot of their policies. Like, how would they explain blasphemy laws?
Can you?
I guess they would just say the same way, I don't know, we did in the past. I guess they say.
Surely some of this has to be
control of
grounded
culture.
in the worship of the fire gods, Mazda, and things like that in Iran.
Yeah, I can see that.
Some of it has to be based in that.
Yeah.
Worship of.
That they believe in Mazda, the fire god. They believe that God has two faces, one good, one evil,
and this goes back to Persian.
Zoroastrianism.
Yeah, Zoroastrianism. This goes back to Persian.
Zoroastrianism.
Very popular in Persia,
Yeah.
like
and
many
there's
as
still
well.
some of them practicing in Bombay.
Yeah, I mentioned so. Yeah.
A few in Iran. I think they're going back to it in Iran. But most cultures absorb into their religions.
Yes.
What's there
Yeah, that's
already.
absolutely true. I would argue that Christianity as a religion can be multicultural. In other words, well, I think it's self-evident, right? Like, you can see people with different skin colors, different backgrounds, and they are all Christian, and they all have that. Yeah. What about it?
Well, the Inquisition, for example.
Did you expect it?
Was a form of what?
So, it's in Monty Python. No one expects a Spanish Inquisition. No.
No one expects the Spanish Inquisition.
Yeah, you not heard of that.
No, do you know what? Like,
You're not sympathetic. Oh, okay. Well, you're missing the classic.
Like,
But anyway.
Python is something which has honestly passed me by enough. But the Inquisition, for example, was a search for heretics.
Yes.
A witch hunt.
In which sense are you talking about?
So I wouldn't say it's a
found
witch
out
hunt,
to be-
and there's a reason why I wouldn't say it's a witch hunt. But
But why? Why do you think that happened? Like, what's the background in it?
Apostasy.
well, no, that the Inquisition didn't actually end up killing as many as some people reported did.
That's right.
It's actually in the thousands, not in the millions, which you will hear people claim.
Well, in the modern era, the McCarthyism within the
course,
United
America,
States, for
yeah.
example.
Anti-communism,
but whatever it
But
is,
well, you could even say that some parts of McCarthyism were justified potentially because they were actually
the
communist
time,
spies, right? You know, yeah. You can critique the idea, but you can say there was actually a threat.
Iraq after 2001, then there's an extension of logic which justifies a casus belli, whether rightly or wrongly. Anyway, the point that I'm trying to make is that through history, wherever you would like to search, there are systems, authoritarian regime systems, in which heresy or apostasy or whatever it is not tolerated by the authoritarian.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Well, I'm not
Position
challenging
had
that view. I'm just
had a far
adding
deeper
context to the
cause
view.
to it than what you're saying. It had a far deeper cause because when the Spaniards took over Granada, the last Muslim state in Spain, they inherited a lot of Jews. And what they did was they gave the Jews a choice. They gave them either convert to Catholicism or else leave the country. A lot of them actually went to Turkey. A lot of them converted, and it was those converts that the state were afraid of. They believed that they weren't actually true converts. And a lot of those converts actually went to South and Central America with the conquerors.
Well, it's like saying, if everyone votes Conservative, then there's no problem. The government will win.
It's again, I have to look at it from an Irish perspective here. I have to look at it from Irish. We had a famine in 1850, and what happened was food was being exported, but certain foods were being imported. Now, people had to convert to get the food. In Ireland, we call them supers. Soupers. People who took the soup. Yeah. They took the soup. In other words, they got food to stay alive, and they became Church of Ireland because of it. Now, the Church of Ireland people didn't trust him. After that, they just didn't trust him.
You wouldn't.
And that's exactly the way it was with the Jews.
But you need to eat.
That was the same with the Jews in Spain. They had to eat as well. They had to exist as well. But the state didn't trust them.
But then you're talking about hierarchy, aren't you? You're talking about a
Guys,
a system in
I'm
which-
probably going to have to head up now.
Thank
But
you very much.
it was great having a chat with you. Great catching up with
See
you.
you in a year's time.
Okay, well, I'll see you when I next see you, my friends. God bless. Take care as well.
Big wrap up.
Good one. Ah, there we go.
Up with that, Chris.
Cool. Having a chat with a gentleman about the history of Christianity of the world. We talked about Ireland and how Christianity manifests there. We talked about how the English came into Ireland and did many things there as well. I'm trying to summarize exactly what we talked about. It talks about many different topics. Ultimately talking about Islamic culture, about how Islamic culture comes into the English, how it manifests, how we are, either as Christians or as atheists, going to tackle Islamic culture, how we're going to evangelize, in my case, to Muslims, and what our mission actually is here at the park. Our mission here is to evangelize to Muslims and to get them to understand that their religion is not the true religion and to get them to turn away from that. And I know very much my friend here is not a Christian. I hope one day he will be, but at the very least we have the same objective. We both understand that Islam is not a good religion or a true religion, and it is better if people leave Islam.
Thank you.
God bless.
Thank you, sir. Cut!